Hello, my name is Desiree Champlin and this is build version 13 for Team Firefox. As we load in, we met with a cutscene of the backstory and what the player has to do in order to beat the game. As we enter the main menu, we go to our Jira page to discuss what I have done for this week's sprint. The first is the playtesting and feedback adjustments, and currently I have added audio into the game so we can adjust the audio. Sadly, there is a minor issue and I did not showcase it in this video. Next we go over to Hub Central Jira issue where we will discuss everything that it took to recreate the central hub area. The centralized hub area is where the player spawns into the game. I was tasked with recreating the entire zone. So the first subtask was to recreate the hub landscape where everything will be located. Then we follow up with rebuilding the Wizard's Tower, which is where the player starts. Followed by floating hub crystals. This is where the 3 crystals representing each zone is located. This will be followed up by the intro obstacles, which are obstacles that are scattered throughout the game. Lastly, will be the populate zone. That will be the order in this video. To recreate the hub landscape, I had to use the landscape tools to start getting the general layout of the land and plan on where the 3 transition zones will be located at. As we go back to the main menu, we enter the level. We do a quick look around of our surroundings, we then head down the stairs to go outside so we can take a look at the landscape. I've added various sizes of hills to add a realistic feel of what landscapes actually look like. We go into the pause menu to stop the timer so we can go to our next Jira issue that worked on. That issue is the Rebuild Wizard's Tower. This where the player spawns. This holds the game's main crystal and various floating crystals within the tower. We now go back to the game to show you the Wizard's Tower. Once again we head back into the pause menu so we can once again go back into Jira to look at the next issue I worked on. The next issue was the 3 floating crystals. These crystals represent the 3 different zones that the player will play through. Once we are back in game, we head back outside to showcase the 3 floating crystals. The 3 zones are Volcano, Arctic and Forest. They are color coordinated for easy identification. We then will head back over to Jira to discuss the next issue. Once we're back on Jira, we go to set up the transition area or zone. There are 3 transition areas that transitions the player from the hub area to a different zone. This will allow for seamless transition. We head back to the game to showcase this and how they currently look. The first one will be the forest zone. Next we will head over to the Arctic zone where the grass and snow fades into one another and the pillars showcase how the temperature goes from warm to cold. I added icicles to help with the aesthetics of the Arctic. After the Arctic, we run across to the volcano zone. The pillars here represents the temperature as well, going from warm to very hot due to the lava. I will probably add a gradient to the ground and the sides of the transition to help showcase the transition from hub to volcano. We once again go back into the pause menu to stop the timer and we head back over to Jira. This issue is on introduction to different obstacles that is scattered throughout the main hub area where the player may interact with said obstacles. Now we head back into the game to showcase the different obstacles. Lastly, we back into pause to go to Jira for our last issue we will discuss and showcase for this week's sprint. Our last issue is to populate the landscape with trees, flowers, collectible crystals and everything within the hub zone. So let's dive back into the game. I do hope you enjoyed watching my segment and all of the hard work. Looking forward to receiving feedback, tips and suggestions. Thank you for watching.
Hello, I'm Eddie Velasquez, and today I will be discussing the tasks that I worked on this sprint for Firefox Games Beyond the Jump project. Excuse me. So for the first one, starting off forest zone landscape. So it was descriptions to create the basic landscape for the forest zone that'll define the bounds and the path from start to finish. That also connects to the central hub. And at the end of that level, or at the end of the landscape, there's going to be that crystal in place for the player to be able to return back to the start at the hub, and the completion criteria was the landscape created that creates the foundational framework for what will eventually become the forest zone with a clear path from start to finish. And I worked on this for 2 hours. So we'll go ahead and get the build fired up here for this first time. And I'm going to go ahead and click through this real quick. All right. Start it off. Now, once we're in here, exiting the tower here, if we come out, here we have the forest landscape first and foremost right in front of us. And you can see the landscape is shaped and it creates this little valley. And that's what everything was built into, with a little peninsula and a lake that wraps around. That's one of those 5 level crystals that needs to be collected, or excuse me, crystal shards. And it wraps around a peninsula, we'll see here shortly, and there is the level crystal there at the end that'll teleport them back to the start zone over here. So that was the forest zone landscape, and if we hop over to Jira again, pulling up the next task that we've got, we'll continue looking at the landscape along the way. We also have the golden path. So the first pass for the golden path was keeping with the fundamental design principles and with the landscape in place, providing that framework, create the first pass for the golden path for the player to follow. This includes the obstacles and mechanics the player is going to encounter. Make sure to incorporate the fundamental design principles to include things like breadcrumbing and alternate pathing to give the player choices. Has the level completion criteria of the 5 crystal shards along the way, with consideration and space left for like optional or hidden paths. Depended on the forest landscape being completed, which it was. And then for the completion criteria, have a completed level from start to finish that the player can use to avoid hazards, interacting with mechanics, while collecting the 5 crystals with breadcrumbing along the way. And so we have that here. Also, as we go to pass through it, in the interest of time, a task that was also worked on in conjunction, we'll demonstrate them both simultaneously, is the optional paths. With the golden path established, incorporate optional areas for the player to explore to offer the choice of reward at greater risks. They may provide a shortcut, more collectibles, both, etc. It depended on the forest zone landscape and the first pass of the golden path. And for the completion criteria, it was there exists optional pathing for the player to take that affords the player the choice of risk versus reward while traveling along the golden path. And I worked on this one for 2 hours. Not sure if I mentioned it, but for the golden path, I worked on this one 4 hours. So 7 hours in total for both of these. I'll pull back the build. This right here was along the golden path, that first level crystal. Continuing down, the golden path takes us here. There is a little bit of an optional space for the player to be able to kind of see the end and where this golden path is going to take them, but they can't progress through here. If they jump off, they will die in the water hazard here. So here we lead the player along. There's those purple crystals for the breadcrumbing along the way. Took my own self out on the jump. Here we have that second crystal. Now here's where they have a choice. They can either continue down this way or hop over to the left, passing through there. Both of these paths converge right there at the center at that checkpoint if you want. And you can make your way along all of those logs to the next crystal there. Or if you want to be bold, you can come up this way for the chance at more crystals. This is one of those like optional paths along the way, kind of flowing in conjunction with the golden path. It's lit up, as you can see, so the player can see where it's taking them. And then he continues around. It's gonna pop up there, and then they can run along here. They gotta be quick for the reward, otherwise they risk falling into the water. And here we have about the halfway point through along our optional path that now connects back to our golden path here for the player. Another sort of obstacle to avoid, these swinging balls. Make their way along. Now here, the golden path continues down this way, or they can, if they notice it, hop over to a little secret zone. Oop, missed my own jump. Hop over to a little secret zone here. Gonna be quick. Pick up a couple of crystals over here. That's one of those optional paths for them. Or hidden paths, I should say. And then we have our golden path continuing this way. It's starting to get a little bit more intense with both the jumps and needing to be quick on your feet to make it through. And then you could come over here, take that and try to grab those crystals. You could go from there, hop around, continue down that way. There's more of those options for the player. We're gonna come over here. See if we can't clear this. All right. Hop over. There's that fourth of 5 level crystals. Hit another checkpoint. Progress along. And then here we have an optional path over there to go grab more crystals if you want. Try to collect them as quickly as possible. Oh, running out of time. And then here we have the end. Now here we have a known bug with the attenuation with these sounds, so it might get a little loud, and I apologize. Pass through. Oh, it wasn't too bad. There it goes. And here we have the last of the level crystals. You can see up in the top right, forest level crystal formed, so completion there. Another hidden area for the player to hop into if they want. And then that end zone criteria, final little section. Player hops up here. The paths are now completely won. There are no more optional paths. They've made it to the end. Navigating up. We get to that teleport crystal at the end. That teleports us back. And that is the optional and golden path passes. So we come back here. For the initial collectible placements along the golden path and optional pathing, place the collectible crystals to be used as breadcrumbing for the player and the forest landscape. It required the landscape to be done, the golden path and the optional paths to be completed, and then the completion criteria was the initial placement of collectible crystals along the golden path and optional paths in a moderate amount that may be increased or decreased based on our feedback that we got. And so if we come back in here, there's still some floating around. I didn't collect all of them, so these purple crystals I was collecting along the way, we've got them scattered about, so they follow along, and as you can see over here in this golden path over that way. Oh, these jumps are a little tricky over here. Still need some adjustments. Yeah, still some adjustments on that one. But as you can see, in the build here, oops, we have those initial placements of all those level crystals. They're there along the logs, leading the player along the way. There is the breadcrumbing that was done in the hidden path over here. There's some hidden ones over there. And just generally all along the path, as demonstrated earlier when I was going through the golden path, those crystals are led or there to lead the player along the way however you want to go. Excuse me. So for the next one that I'll go through is populating the zone. With the golden path and optional paths in place, populate the zone with placeholder assets representative of the respective zone, dependent on the landscape. Golden path, optional paths, all created with the collectibles, and have the zone appropriately populated. So in here, the zone, again, as we pass through, is populated with all these assets. There's our spinners. We've got these placeholder like little islands, the logs. Everything's covered up mostly in the grid stuff still, and we've got the meshes for the bushes here to keep the player, kind of set up some bounds. It's not perfect, but it definitely portrays the feel of the forest. We've got these placeholder mushrooms that at least have the shape, if not the final form, and I am terrible at my own jumps. So these are all the placeholders that are throughout, and they just continue throughout the rest of the level. Pause again. The next task to go through for what we have is the checkpoints. So we have hub checkpoints, forest checkpoints, volcano and Arctic checkpoints. All of these tasks are the same as far as what needed to happen. It was to place the checkpoints around the hub. This depended on the hub and all the other zones being recreated for all the other tasks. And for the completion criteria, we needed functional checkpoints around the hub, volcano, forest, and Arctic zones that allowed the player to respawn in the event of a player death and save their progress along the way. Each of these took me no more than 30 minutes. This one 30 minutes. I think the shortest one was the Arctic. That took me about 15 minutes to slap those in there. Just mostly sorting out where they were going to go. So to see that, if we quit, I think this is going to pop me in the wrong build, but I got to debug to swap over. Or excuse me, the wrong level. So debug, swap myself back over. Here's the checkpoints. You can see we have these ones here within the hub. Now the hub checkpoints are special because they are set to be a safe space, basically. If the player dies when they are inside of one of the, or they've selected one of these hub checkpoints or hit one of those hub checkpoints, they will not lose a life. So they can kind of freely take on the obstacles. But along the way, elsewhere, there's the forest checkpoints here. There's one here, one here. They're scattered about, generally nearby or close to where the level crystals, these little crystal shards are. You can see them clearly marked by those wooden signposts that populate the area. There's another one over there. And then if we proceed to the other zones, it's the same thing. These are just toggled with an instance editable Boolean. Same with the obstacles that set them to being a practice zone. Here's the Arctic ones. One there, just kind of scattered about. Hop through. So yep, whenever the player passes through them, they pop up. Kind of just squeeze my way through here. Last one's right there, floating around for that. Oh, that helps. No. We'll go ahead and restart this. Okay, so here we have, again, the checkpoints. I saw them over in the Arctic zone, forest zone. Here we have them in the volcano zone as well. These were placed in here. Adjustments were probably made here and there as needed to kind of fit the zones themselves, but they do exist over here along these paths. Is that one right there? The next one right there. But yeah, the checkpoints placed throughout, so that way, just along the way, to kind of keep the pacing for the player as they pass through obstacles and such. Terrible at my own jumps. Not a platformer. For the next bit, the refill lives function, that was sort of covered as we went along, but with the crystals at the end of the levels, as the player wanted the reward for successfully completing a level in the form of additional lives. There are no dependencies for this. The completion criteria was functionality implemented to restore one or more lives to the player upon interacting with the crystal at the end of the zone and returning to the central hub. This took me an hour to complete, and what it actually ended up being was that the code doesn't restore a life. It actually just increments and gives the player one life, the same as if they collect 50 of the life crystals. So if we pull the build up, and this affects all of the crystals, not just the forest. So any of these zones works. And since I'm here in the volcano, go ahead and complete it. There's another one of those checkpoints. Hop along here. These are a little tricky, so I might fail a bunch. And if it becomes too difficult, I'll just reset. Aha. All right, so as we approach this final crystal, you'll see that I have 4 lives right now, and when I interact, the player's lives in the top left of the screen has incremented up to 5. And every time the player picks up, or excuse me, interacts with that crystal, it will actually increment the life up by +1. The next thing that I did was I updated the interaction. The interaction update is that the teleport crystals, as just demonstrated in that last video, the interaction used to be that when you interacted with the crystal, it would pop up a widget and you'd have to select what you wanted to do. So for the description, we wanted to update the interaction with the teleportation crystals to streamline it by removing the necessity of the menu widget, replacing it with a screen prompt to return with a simple press, utilizing the already implemented interaction system provided that the player is within range. There was no dependencies. The interaction system already existed for the use within the mushroom spores in the forest zone. And for the completion criteria, the player could approach the crystal at the end of the respective zone, and instead of being brought up to a regular widget that you had to navigate with a mouse and click on yes or no, they are instead prompted in real time to interact, and as soon as they do that, they are returned. Or they may walk away and just keep doing what they're doing. And this took me 2 hours to complete. Um, so here we can go ahead and resume. It was just demonstrated back there in the last little clip where I demonstrated the lives incrementing up, but we'll zip through the Arctic zone real quick and get that together. Oh. All right. Ooh, slippery. Okay. I'm just gonna rush through here to the end. That way we can just demonstrate the way that the crystal, those are slippery. Demonstrate the way the crystal works. All right, so again, here is one of the, and oh no. All right. Terrible at platformers, I apologize. There we go. So here's the crystal. You can see at the bottom of the screen says E to interact, or I can just continue to walk around, walk back up, E to interact, press the button, and I am returned back to the central hub with my progress saved for what I'd done. Pulling back up, the tasks, the checkpoint system, as far as a bug, that's one of the next ones I'll go over. The checkpoint system, we have a bug. I unfortunately don't have anything to show. The bug with this one was a bug that we noticed at the end of the last class. It was absolutely critical because it was completely just about game breaking. But the bug was that the original checkpoint system was causing a bug um, where the player would automatically just respawn at the start of the game instead of at the last checkpoint that they had crossed. So the description was the original checkpoint save system that was it trying to be implemented was very complicated and ended up not working. And so I worked to clean it out and replace it with a more stable and simplified checkpoint system. So in order to have originally replicated it in a build that is no longer up on the depot, is much, much older than what we're using now. Um, if you went in and you spawned in and you proceeded into a level, hit a checkpoint, and then fell or died, it would then respawn you back at the level start inside the tower instead of at the checkpoint. It was critical. It was the very first thing we worked on as soon as we noticed it in the build that we put up for the end of the last class. And as you can see in here, the checkpoints no longer do that. Whichever one you've selected or passed will be the one that you go to. I can come over here, hit this one, no issues whatsoever. It's going to pop me back here. And they also, make sure that they reorient the player. I can come over here, pop back. I lost a life. So that's the checkpoint update that got done. Again, unfortunately, I don't have anything else to really show for it, but that did take me about 3.5 hours to work on. It was primarily a lot of clearing out the code from the old system because it was very much ingrained. Whole new game mode and everything is utilized now from that. Um, so. Another task was the practice checkpoint life game. Not sure if it was really necessarily a bug. Oh, sorry. So when passing the checkpoints that were marked as a practice zone, if you had lives that were more than 4 lives, it would actually reset them back to 4 instead of maintaining the lives that you had. It took me an hour and 15 minutes to clear this up. And what it is you can actually open it up. And while we're playing, we have a nifty debug where you press the 2 key. I've got 50 crystals. I now have 5 lives. I have hit the checkpoint. And when I die, I still have 5 lives. And the issue with it before was if I had 5 lives and I respawned at a practice checkpoint, it would reset me back to 4. It no longer does that now. Another bug that I took care of, again, didn't really get any of videos of the actual bugs in the problem. Did experience them though. We had this one where our falling bridge platforms, like those ones that I took walked over in the forest, they would sort of spaz out and repeatedly start just respawning and making a lot of noise. For the work log, I figured out what was wrong with it. It took me about 15 minutes to fix it. It was just because the overlap volume, the original code for it didn't have any sort of check to see what was overlapping. It just, as soon as it overlapped, it was going to trigger. And so when they were too close, it was actually causing them to trigger each other every time they respawned. Initial spawn didn't cause it because that generate overlap events on spawn wasn't there. And so it was only noticed when you actually stepped on it for the first time and triggered the respawn. So added a check to make sure it was the player, and you do not have any issues. We don't have any issues with these and their proximity and respawning as they should. They disappear and pop up on their own without wigging out, regardless of their proximity, because the volumes are a little can get a little tight. For the playtest level adjustments, there we had some feedback. There was 2 bits of feedback. I do recognize that we do need 10 bits of feedback between myself, some of the other team members, and then the 2 playtest videos and responses that we were able to get. These were some of the adjustments that I did make. However, this is nowhere near final. There was about 4 hours put on here trying to like move things around and kind of get things uh, set in place. Um, and so for this one, it was just in order to make the places level fit more in line with, oh, excuse me. This is how we adjusted the old playtest level to be our new level, and also turning it into a test zone. Um, that was kind of the last thing. Originally, the level in the world was much larger. There was 5 zones to go through, 5 crystals to collect, so 25 total. Made the play way longer than 10 minutes. And so, in order to create the build to be more in line with what we are going for, and with the new design that you see as we've been playing, we needed to create the playtest zone to match that. And so I went through, it took me about 4 hours. It is the old version 0.009 that one of the instructors was kind enough to play through to give us some feedback on as well. And so that one was where we shrunk everything down and made it. That level now is a test zone. Once we finished utilizing it for the playtest and we got this level ready to be playtested and going through, I could switch over to it now, switched over to a test zone. So now we have our big test space where we can kind of test some stuff out, just mess around with things uh, for for our own uses. See, we got some of the different interaction things, crystals and stuff along the way. So that is what this did eventually evolve into, and that was like the last little few bits on that. All of this came together. Playtesting, feedback adjustments. This is what I misclicked on the task. This one, there is always a lot of room to improve, as the task says, with feedback from playtest. I did not really get a whole lot of done with doing this just because of all the level tasks that we needed to do. We did need to make sure that we had the forest zone ready to go. From the play testing that we did get done, it was on the older build, version 0.009. And while it didn't have the same geometry of the level that we have now, I was able to get good feedback on what needed to happen. Um, and the reason why I marked it as done is due to a code freeze and everything. I know we needed 10 plays to really make good adjustments. And so I didn't really log a whole lot of time on it, and I got it to where it is. And I know going forward, we're going to need a lot more adjustments along the way with playtest. But I did take into consideration um, 2 of the comments that we had from the build. And one of those was that the respawn was really jarring, and that it just felt really weird and very quick, and so I added that delay into it. If we pop back over, switch over to the level again, there is that little bit of delay that kicks in when the player dies, instead of it just snapping directly back. And there's that little bit of a sound. It used to be much more jarring than that. Very just quick snap and instant go. And then the other one was the amount of collectibles scattered about the world was just a lot, and it felt more like a chore for the player. So we went through and we made sure that there was not an overwhelming amount of crystals for the player to collect. There used to be probably close to 200 just in one zone. And so we substantially shrunk that down and made it less of a chore for the player. The last actual task that I have on Jira that I'm going to actually pull up, um, you can see it in the build, but it's also not necessarily visible as you're playing, because the other task that I worked on, the final one, was getting our build size down. I documented this like I was a captain on a ship, or something, with like a ship's log going through. This was a massive undertaking that needed to happen because the project was, it's as it says description, the build size at the start of this sprint currently sat at a little over 3 gigs. It was 3 times the maximum allowable size for the milestone, double the size for a insufficient. Like, to even get an insufficient, it was more than double that. And at the start of it, there was so many unutilized and unneeded assets and files within the project, even still. And so the completion criteria for this was the successful removal of all unnecessary project, or excuse me, files within the project to reduce the overall project and build size to below 1 GB while maintaining the project build and integrity. And that part right there was the kicker. This is an undertaking that I took that I did not anticipate would be nearly as long as it was, but it took a substantial amount of time to really make sure that both it was thoroughly cleaned out so that we could get this build size down, and B, the project did not get completely nuked because of the removal of certain aspects and assets. So as you can see here, it took me 2 days, 7 hours, and 45 minutes, well over the amount of time that I thought it was going to take. During the last class, we had an issue where some Perforce hiccups, people trying to condense and clean the project up, ended up making it very, very large. And so I had already reduced it down substantially and gotten it into a stable place. With this one needing it to be even smaller, I started going through and cleaning up blueprints that weren't needed. I took out, there was a lot of materials that weren't used. Um, Materials had been created instead of material instances, which those were larger, causing more bulk and bloat. Many of the textures that we had weren't needed. There was a lot of more finalized looking things in there. So went through with a fine tooth comb and a delicate hand, and going through the folders and files basically one by one, checking the reference viewer, double checking references, replacing references where I needed to, as things were basically kind of dumbed down. And you can see along the way, it started off here. I believe this is the first one. Yeah, it started off at 3.13, and got it down to 2.59. By the time, oops, um, by the time we got it back up to and I closed Jira, I apologize. By the time we got it back up to the correct size, or by the time we got it to the playtest build that needed to populate for um, for the first turn in for this class, we were only able to get it down, or I was only able to get it down to 1.08. And that, we did get hit for that. I didn't keep focusing on it. I actually moved it to done because I did know that I had other tasks to take care of. That was the lion's share of the work that I did. The last little hour was how I got it down to the end. But if we go back to everything that was going down, we got it. It was initially very big. I did eventually get it down for this turn in to under 1 gig. The smallest it was at 960. I think it's currently sitting at 965 right now. And that was a massive, again, massive undertaking to make sure it was done while working in conjunction with everyone else to make sure that I didn't step on toes. People didn't step on, my toes as I was trying to clean things out to just get this whittled down and make it as optimized as possible. It cut down on the warnings that we were getting. It cut down on the size that we were getting. So everything is now much in a much better space in an unzipped fashion. So that concludes the work that I had completed during this sprint, and thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Brandon Johnson. I am in the Firefox games team, and I'm going to be going over everything I did in this sprint for Jira and my task and stories and my bugs that I had to do. I'm going to go over that first, and then we're going to go over the game itself. I'll open that in just a second. First is we're just gonna go over the. It's gonna go from top to bottom, the zone planning and layouts. Um, this here took. There we go. It took me about an hour to get this done. We did estimate two, but it only took me an hour. Where as the developer, I wanted my team to understand the layout of each zone to fully grasp the idea of it. And I did the volcano zone, which is then the completion is the map is finished and the team is able to understand the creation. And then here are my 3 pictures of how we wanted to, not how we were going to make the volcano entrance, just an idea. But I know this is like probably a little interesting, but this is usually the starting area. We have the path to get to the volcano, and this is inside the volcano, starting all around to getting to the end. Next, as you see, yes, I did the 1 hour. Next on here is we'll just do the next zoning, zone and planning layout since we're just on that. The next zoning layout was the Arctic zone. Now, as you see, I did have another one for the forest, but I did not do the forest because the forest was already done. The level is done before. But we already had a good idea for the forest, so I didn't do anything on that one. But this one took me hour 50 of getting this done. And then as a developer, I wanted my team to understand the layout of each zone and fully grasp the idea of the Arctic zone. And the completion was that the map is finished and the team was able to understand the creation. As you're going to see later, this is not how we did it. So this was just before, and then I changed it up a little bit after to make it look a little better. So I created all of this just to get an idea of how we wanted the map to be. Next, we're going to go over the Arctic landscape. So I did everything mostly involving the Arctic landscape, the Arctic level and area. The description, sorry. The description was create the basic landscape for the Arctic zone that will both define the bounds and the path for the from start to finish and connects to the central hub at the end. At the end of the crystal, to return the player back to the hub is placed so they can quickly return to the hub. There weren't any dependencies, but the only creation criteria was the landscape created that creates foundational framework for what will become the Arctic zone with clear path from start to finish. And then this picture is just an idea of the landscape. I was thinking more of like icebergs going around the area with water in the middle. And that took me 3 hours, 51 minutes logged, 9 minutes remaining, so a 4 hour estimate as well. And then just what I did here. So next, we can talk about the Golden Path, which was estimated of 4 hours. Took me 3 hours and 20 minutes to do the Golden Path. So this one is in keeping the fundamental design principles and with the landscape in place, providing the framework, create the first pass of the Golden Path for the player to follow, such as obstacles and mechanics the player can encounter, incorporates fundamental designs principles that include initial breadcrumbing paths with collectible crystals and alternating pathing, which I'll show in a little bit. The level completion create criteria of collecting the 5 level crystals along the path. Consideration space left for optimal pathing. Dependency was the Arctic zone landscape completed, and the completion criteria is that the player can navigate the zone from start to finish while avoiding interacting with hazards, obstacles, and mechanics. Players can can collect the 5 remaining level crystals. That is, and is at the minimum provided breadcrumbing along the way to guide them. And just again, just did a 3 hour 20 minutes, and it was only about 40 minutes remaining. I didn't need the full time to finish all of that. Just so you know, this is 32 hours if you add these all up together, but I did not do 32 hours because these two weren't done. The falling rock bug I was going to do, but we scrapped that for the because this was for something else. We are gonna use it for the volcano level, but then we scrapped that for me to give it to someone else. So just to let you know, I believe we are using the falling rock bug, but we did have a bug with the falling rocks, but we did not. I did not do that one. Um, Next is the optional paths. So for this one, the description was the initial golden path establish, incorporate optional areas for the player to explore that offer the choice of a reward at a greater risk. These paths may provide a shortcut, more collectibles, both, etc. Dependencies is Arctic Zone Landscape, Golden Path, and the completion criteria is that these exits optional pathing for the player to take that affords the player to choose the choice of risk versus reward while traveling along the Golden Path. And you see, it took me about 3 hours 20 minutes to do this, and then with the 40 hours remaining as well. And then my work log as well. I didn't show the work log for the others, but as I see, you did need those. So I'm gonna go back for the other ones, but this shows my work log. Where 3 days ago, Arctic pathing is done for now. I did the crystals at the end. Added the crystals at the end crystals. Did not add the end crystals. Also added a few. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Basically, just make a snowfall, make it look cooler. I've added other mechanics to the level to get started as well. Also, I've added 3 other places the player can go to collect things, and this can be found in the middle of the level. And then this does say 4 hours, but it was not 4 hours. It was yesterday. I got home around 12, and then I worked on it from like 1 to 2:30, 2:20ish. And I forgot to submit it on Jira because I was like falling asleep. So this probably isn't English. Maybe added a little of the purple coins as well. It's now, as of now, I like what I see. I have other ideas, but I'll wait for the next sprint because we wanted to just finish things up to get it ready. For the Golden Path, I did the Arctic Path thing is done for now. Did the crystals? Oh, this is about the same because I did them all together at one time. So it took me about 3 hours, and this one's a little different. This is the landscape, but for the Golden Path and optional path, it took me about I did about both of these at the same time. For the landscape, this one took a few. Rough draft of the ice. This is just the rough draft of the iceberg, and then later I updated the landscape. Used the racing landscape to make the icebergs look more authentic. Have to see how it looks when we add the material of color, and I smoothed out the insides and the outsides as well. Finalize the landscape doing small touches and smoothing a level, added more to the landscape as well, put icy water in the level, also added a big iceberg in the middle. Colored the landscape and used the sky textures that made it work a little to make it look like ice. Cool. And then for the zone planning, work log, just a rough draft of the volcano top down. These 3 photos, one beginning, middle, and where the player is in the volcano. Next is the playtesting and feedback adjustment. The description was there is always something to improve upon with feedback from playtests and the team. Make the adjustment corrections to the space as required to maintain the flow. And then there's appendices is that we need the Arctic landscape, golden path, optional path, initial collectible placement, and the playtesting feedback done. And the completion criteria is adjustments and corrections made based on the player feedback and ready for the playtest to be further adjusted. And then that took about 2 hours logged in from that. Workload, playtest several times, fix changes to improve the game, and the initial collectible and feedback, or not feedback, so initial collectible placement is along both the golden and optional pathing, place the collectible crystals to be used as breadcrumbs for the player. Dependencies is the Arctic landscape, golden path, optional path, and then the completion criteria is initial placement of collectible crystals along the path and optional paths in a moderate amount that may be increased, decreased, and or moved based upon play test feedback, which we're hoping to get soon. I had about an hour logged into that, which I did add a little of the purple coins as well. I was able to find the snowball at the moment, or fix. That's supposed to say fix. I was able to fix the snowballs because they were killing the player, and I was able to figure that out and then make sure it doesn't kill the player. Next was the popularization of the zone. As of 4 hours, took me 3 hours and 10 minutes. The description was with the golden and optional paths in place, populate the zone with placeholder assets representative of the respective zones. The dependency is landscape, golden path, optional path, and initial collectibles. The completion criteria zone is populated with zone appropriate placeholders to represent and be placed with final assets. And my workload added a little of the purple coins. Basically, anything that says this is the same for the other ones. The ones that say I did it like a few hours ago, but that was because I did it all together last night. We went over the zone planning, and then just the falling rocks. Like I said, I did not do because we decided to switch it up, and then there's no description of that because we were still on and off if I was going to work on that. And then this is, like I said, the description as the developers. I wanted to make understand the layout of each zone. Dependency was for the forest zone, but the map is finished and the team's able to understand the creation. But we already had the creation of the forest zone, so I did not create the forest zone. But these are 32 hours that was given to me, and as you see down here, this is the workload pie of the sprint that we had for this week and a half, 2 weeks. So now I'm going to open up Perforce and show the build. And sorry, I did not get the latest, so hopefully it takes 2 seconds. I should have done this before recording, but I forgot. Perfect. So now, oops. Let me open up our build here, and I will show what I have done in my level. So this is just the beginning part, but we're gonna go start. There we go. So my level is over here to the left. And then this is everything that I have created. This landscape of the ice level. So make our way inside. I have created the snow that is falling. Everything that you see here. I'm gonna jump. The crystals you can collect. The ones that you need and the purple ones. And this is the water part where you're not supposed to fall into or you will die. You're gonna make your way. I'm gonna try not to die. So there are optional paths where you could go this way. I changed it up at first. There was where you can just go down from here, but our checkpoint starts here. So you make your way up and then you can gradually just slide down if you like. Then there's more crystals up there. So here you can choose to use this ball if you want to roll around. This ball is used to destroy these. But basically just make your way around. Try to make your way around to get to the end without touching the spikes. There's another ball for you. Like I said, the balls we have to fix, but you can use them if you're strategic enough to destroy stuff to collect more. There's another secret path here where you can go up to get that crystal. You can run and jump like that, get this one, and I died. But, as you can see, it is pretty hard. You just gotta be real careful. See, I'm gonna try it again. And I died again. But, basically, stuff that we do have to fix. We did play test this. Other people on my team has play tested this, so they have completed it. I'm just not good at it, I guess. But everything here, if you make your way over here, it's an optional path. I'm not good at this game apparently. But that's my optional path over there to the left. We can try this again. Alright. We're gonna try that again. But that is my optional path where... Oops. The player can collect more. Make my way back. So we're gonna use this to destroy that one. There we go. So we can get through. I'm gonna make it easier. Get this checkpoint here. And then there we go. So I got another optional area where you can go around. Use the ball. There's supposed to be spikes here, but you know, there's always glitches. Where you can make your way up here. So this is one of the optional places where you can jump, collect more crystals if you like, and then make your way back down. And then it leads you to the third part. There's another secret area where you can grab crystals from there. And then you just make your way to the end crystal, where you interact with it. It will take you back, but I have 4 out of 5 because I did not get the other one, so it's not going to play the animation. But that is what I created in the ice level, or the Arctic level of what I created. I hope you enjoyed that. Have a great day.
Hey, I'm Jonah, and this is my segment of our Sprint 1 review. So I'll go ahead and I'll boot up a project here from our build folder in Perforce. Plays the intro. We can click through to skip because I'm sure that's already been shown off thus far. And first I'm going to go into the core level that's actually in the game, and then after that we're going to go into the test level, and I can show some of the cut content that I worked on. That may be incorporated later on, or it might just stay shelved, depending upon how things are looking. So, we go out here, and most of the sprint for me was spent on this area, one of 3 areas within the game. It's going to be the volcano area. I had a much larger version of this that was created previously. But the issue that we had is that it just took way too long to get through, and so I took some of the ideas and was able to reuse some of them, but for the most part this was all kind of rebuilt with the goal in mind of keeping playtime within the area around roughly 2 minutes. So as we go through here, you can see there's 2 different paths. There's a side area over here with some extra collectibles, and then I'm going to go through this area first. So at first it just has the player doing basic jumps. If they fall, then they aren't punished, they just have to walk back up. And then we have jumps over lava, which will kill the player, or not kill the player, damage the player and cause them to go back to the checkpoint. And now after putting that area, we're introduced to moving platforms, and we got one of our first crystals. Now we have to do a jump on a moving platform. And then finally we're going to have to do 2 moving platform jumps back to back before we end up on stable ground. So now we get another checkpoint, and we're introduced to the falling platforms, which fall under the player's feet as was shown in previous builds after it's been stepped on. So now we have multiple of these jumps back to back to increase the period of suspense, and we're going to reach the final mastery zone. So it starts off with just some very long jumps to begin with here, and then you can see the lava will reset the player back towards the start. I did end up adding more checkpoints here just to be more forgiving because of the increased difficulty in what the player is going to be doing. So here we have the first one, and now we have some weird moving platform jumps. We have them back to back. Now we have the falling platform, as you can see, and back to the moving platforms, having to kind of gauge where they're going to be, watching their patterns, one more falling platform jump, and then we reach the next checkpoint. Now we have multiple falling platforms back to back, with the spacing being the increase in difficulty here. And then as you can see, we have falling platforms kind of in the circle here that the player can kind of go around as they wait for the platform to come down. So just sort of like an elevator where you're doing jumps between. Your last crystal, you can kind of see where you came from in the level, back there at the spawn, and a good view of like the other areas in the game. And then we have this final crystal we can interact with. So as you can see, now we can see, like so Jason, one of the things that Jason Allison worked on, that we got all 5 of the crystals and the area is complete. And you can also see that up at the top right here with the HUD. So now that we went through that, I'm going to go over cut content. Go outside here, and we can already see the falling or flying rock, I think is what it's called in Jira. And so it gets launched upon spawn. There can be a delay, and then after it bounces for a while, it'll stop and become a static object in a level. So the idea for this is that there would be rocks that were flying out of the volcano as it's getting close to erupting, and those would then land in the level and then become a part of it. And then the other mechanic that I have here that was cut was these falling rocks. And so they go, and then they'll hit the player, damage them. They were originally meant to be incorporated in the volcano area, but due to time constraints and trying to get it as close to 2 minutes or under as possible, they ended up being cut just because there was no room for them. They might be added back in later, or maybe repurposed in another one of the 3 zones within the level, but for now they're going to remain as cut content. So, like I said before, most of the time was spent on the actual volcano area level, getting things laid out. Going into this next sprint, it's going to be filling the space more, making it look more visually complete, adding some more variety in the textures, because now it's just kind of all one brown kind of mass of land. And then maybe adding some of the glow back into the lava, which we had to remove the original texture for just to try and keep the file size down. But that's it for my segment of this Sprint 1 review. Thank you for watching. Hi, I'm Jonah, and this is my segment of the Sprint 1 review. So here, I'm going to pull up our build. See right here. And then I'll just be going back and forth between the build and then the active sprint page from Jira. So I'm just going to click through the opening there so we can get right into it. The main goal for this sprint was to get our file size down to 1 GB or less. And then the other main goal was to try and get the project playtime down to 10 minutes or less. So before we were looking at like a little over 30 minutes, and then our size was getting close to 4 GB. And my core task was to get the playtime down, which was done in the volcano area, one of the 3 core level areas. So we ended up cutting some of our level areas, like the number down, and then we ended up with 3 in addition to the main hub. So as I just kind of go through here with what I was assigned, it was work in regards to rock mechanics, falling rocks, flying rocks. It was something from the desert level that was going to be repurposed into the volcano section. I'll be showcasing it in the test level just because it ended up getting cut, but we have that there. So go through the description. We had to update them. I ended up just creating like a duplicate and kind of starting from scratch with them just because it was quicker that way. And then within the falling rocks, we have the functionality of them. The flying rocks, which were supposed to be more of a visual thing, shooting out from the volcano as it erupted, landing in set locations around the map, and then becoming solid and stationary. And then with that came changes to how player damage is handled. Something that was more on the back end of things, but basically it just changed how much damage the player could take at once. And then now from that, I can go ahead and I'll just go into the test level so I can showcase those mechanics that were worked on. Right now it cycles in between the test and main levels, so I'm just gonna have to re-click through here as we go out this window here. I'm gonna catch it at the end. Sorry, with the way our build shipped, I didn't have it delaying before it fired off, but as you can see it was moving and then it stops and then it's stationary. It's unclear if we're going to keep that going forward. Right now it's not incorporated into the level, but we were able to get it, or I was able to get it functioning so that whether we use it for that or maybe we use it for like snowballs in the ice level, we have that there. And then these are the falling rocks, which fall down right here. And then upon hitting the player, it deals damage. So these were removed just because there were already enough obstacles in the zone. The core, like I said before, was getting that playtime down, and these seemed like the most obvious of the obstacles to cut until I knew for sure that there would be time to incorporate them. So that's it for that part of the work for this sprint. Now I'm going to go back over here to the sprint, and then we're going to go into the rest. So there was one that was listed under here, which is the color change update. That I looked through everything, looked through the codes, so that's why I have like 5 minutes logged on there. But that was actually taken care of by Eddie. It was his mechanic. He had time, and he made that change already. So I just kind of moved it to done. Didn't really have to touch that anymore. And for the rest of the sprint, it was all spent on this volcano zone. So right here it says, create the basic landscape for it. The reason why I had to create the landscape for something that already existed before is it was so long and had so much going on, and the space was massive that I just needed to start from scratch. Pretty much everything was redone from scratch just to get the playtime down as much as possible. So like some of the ideas, the visuals of it, the setting, all kind of carries over from it, but as it is new and fully recreated. And so the completion criteria for this is just that the landscape created creates the foundational framework for what will become the volcano zone with a clear path from start to finish. And then in addition to that, it's a golden path as you go through the volcano, the obstacles, level crystals that you will grab, and then the space that was left open for optional pathing. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to guide over to the volcano zone just so we can kind of look at it from afar. Be right over here, so you can see there's a basic landscape of it. I didn't go too in depth just because I was really pushing the time. I was already, I think, like 2 hours over the allotted time, so I figured I'd save some of the unnecessary landscaping for in the next sprint. So we go here, we can see there's a complete volcano landscape here, and then there's a set path which we will follow as we go along. We have the optional paths right here which needed to be incorporated. Reward with greater risk is a recurring theme, so like there's more collectible crystals on the more difficult optional paths. And so one of those can be seen right here. This is the main path, and then there's an optional path right here with more difficult jumps as you go across the lava. And then I'll just jump right here into the lava real quick so that you can go back to the start here. And then we have the initial collectibles, which was used for breadcrumbing. You can see those around, the little small purple crystals. So that was done. And then there was a lot of time spent on playtesting and feedback / adjustments. I have 1 hour that was left remaining on there just because I was able to get it done in 3 hours. I didn't feel like I needed any more playtesting, feedback, adjustment time. I was able to focus on other stuff. And then as we were approaching the deadline for the sprint, populating the zone was something that could be put on the back burner. So I got some of it filled right here, which was primarily just done with like the landscape itself, just changing the landscape. But that's something that's going to be focused on more in the coming sprint. And so yeah, We have all those listed here, and I'll kind of go through these landscape and golden path tasks. Like I said, the breadcrumbs, you have them right here, the purple crystals, and then we can see the approach in ramping difficulty. So down there's no lava, you can get back up without being killed, and then now you can see that the danger level increases with the lava. And that right there was one of the required crystals that were shown as well in Jira. I jumped along the path here. You have another one of those crystals up here. And we were introduced to the moving platform. Then we did one jump with the platform that was moving, and then we had 2 moving platform jumps to finish it off. And we hit our checkpoint. Now we have the falling platforms. We have 2 paths here. This is a longer path with more difficult jumps at the end. It gives you more crystals, and then right here we have a separate path that is easier but back to back. There's no break in between. We get another crystal right here, and we are introduced to the final part inside the volcano. We start with some very long, straightforward jumps. Now we have more difficult moving platform jumps. And as you can see, we have the lava underneath. And then, rather than a normal place of rest, we have one of the falling platforms. Player kind of has to watch and see where the platforms rest and then jump towards there. So it's just increasing difficulty as they become more comfortable with the mechanic. We have longer elevated jumps here with the falling platforms. And then, as you can see, we have moving ones right here with extra falling platforms around just in case the timing's off, just to stall. And then we'll take these up to the top. We'll get our last crystal. And then the player has a nice shot of the full path of the level as the game, and then other areas within the game. And so we have this crystal that we saw at the beginning right here. We can interact with it. And then we collected all 5 of the required crystals, going back to the start, and can visually see that the level area was completed. So that's it for my sprint review. That's everything that I accomplished this week. Or week and a half, I guess I should say. And all the tasks that we can see on Jira here. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll stop it right here.
Alright, so depending on the name, it sets the color, and then the charge and the shine all get set to the same for the crystal shards. And I have the thing set to black, so it's very obvious when it's working properly or not working properly. And then for the no. So yeah, and then so I'll hit play here. Check it out. That's the level crystal, sorry. See, that's the green. I also added after the instructor did the play test, he said it was difficult to kind of see them in the dark, so I added the little shimmering Niagara there, as well as I increased the metallic sheen on them. So that way, because I had the luminescence, but it didn't look right to me, so I kept it low, and I think that was part of the problem. So I increased the metallicness of the crystals to make it look, in my opinion, it looks better that way. And then, so the level crystals, we wanted them to actually visibly be able to show a difference in the level crystal as you collected it. And so that's what we did. We went ahead and switched from, we had a portrait. We went ahead and switched from the portrait to the pedestal. And so the crystal's just kind of laying there dull and lifeless. And then when you collect the first one, you can see that it gets a little brighter and the number ticks up, and then so the more you collect, once you collect the fifth one, it starts floating and it gets that same shimmery effect and shine to it, just like the crystal shard. I will show you here in a second. So for the level crystal, the pedestal is what controls the level crystal for the most part. So the level crystal, it shows if it's the level crystal. There's a exposed boolean that will happen, and then it has an attached level sequence. So once it gets all 5 and the player walks up to it, that's when it will activate. And I'll do this real quick. Oops. So once it gets all 5, it will it'll activate like that, and obviously it would be floating up and all shiny and shimmery, not like that. But my debug doesn't actually add the crystals to the count that makes the position change, just the one that activates the level sequence and its collision. So at the beginning, it the level crystal, it checks the crystal, each crystal checks, and it changes the position and everything to no collision, so the player can walk up to it, but it won't trigger the level sequence and it won't collect it. It deactivates the rotating component, and then it also will lay it down. So this inside or on the pedestal, you can select the crystal that is assigned to the pedestal, and that crystal will then have its shine changed. Its shine changed to 0, its color changed to 0, and the counter also set to that same color. And this is color 0, just I did them in kind of indexed 0 to 5, 1 for it being dull and lifeless to the various stages of its color getting brighter, and then just 1 for the shine. It's either dull and lifeless, and then it only gets shinier once all 5 are collected. So when it's dead, it lays down and does not move. The rotation and the height are adjusted. And then once it is collected... Oh, that was disconnected. I did not write that in there. I meant to write that in there. So the level crystals, when they're picked up, over here it checks for the name of the pedestal. And then from there, it adjusts the count. It adjusts the color of the proper pedestal. And then once it gets to the 5th one and sets that, then it goes into, it activates the rotating movement. It sets it to be, the rotation is set to where it's standing straight up, and the height is raised so it's floating above the pedestal, and then its shine and its charge. So the metallic and luminescence are increased to 1, as well as the Niagara on it begins, or is activated, so it starts shimmering. Yeah, so that's the level crystal, and then once you collect the level crystal, there is an internal count in the player character that is keeping track of how many level crystals are collected, and then once the player collects all 3, that takes us into the task for the world crystal, and that just went real dark. Don't know why I did that, but we will go into that. All right, so in the project here, I'm just going to go down the list of things that I have worked on, so that way I'm making sure to cover what I need to cover. So with these first ones, it's updates to the heads-up display. We added 3 additional crystal shards. So we added 3 crystal shards, and 1 for each level, or a type for each level. And then each one had a level crystal. And then the whole map had the world crystal. And then we also had the life crystals. And when we first started, we were just tracking we had 1 score, and all of the crystals were just getting compiled into 1 score, and we had no trackers for the crystal shards in the levels. So that's what this was to update the HUD to track the crystals, and then this was to update the HUD to be, for the data to be a more manageable size. It was quite large before, and so I went in and I'll go here. Oh, why is that so large? Don't know. All right. So I went in and adjusted the, oh, no, wrong area. All right, I don't know. No. Am I missing something? Oh, here we go. All right. So I went in, and before we just had this number here was just over here, and it was quite large. And then we had, this is the timer. It's labeled point for some reason. I'm not sure why, but this is the points tracker over here now. Everything used to be this large, and so I reduced the size down to these. And you can, let me, is there a way to, can I hide these real quick? No. Alright, let me send these to the back real quick, if I can. Nope. Okay. Alright, I will just drag them off real quick, I guess. So underneath these, is what I'm trying to show you, is underneath these there is those. So this is the part that marks it as you've collected all 5 of the crystal shards, and you've completed that level. So it lets the player know that they can stop looking for more crystal shards at that point. And then the life crystals, this keeps track of the life crystals that the player currently has. And then it resets to 0 once the player collects 50, and it adds a life to the player's life pool. The points keep a running tally of all of these combined, plus all of the life crystals that they've collected in throughout the whole game. So when this resets, this does not. And then I also added this here after the instructor did the play test. I noticed that it was kind of difficult to tell when the player could interact with the growing mushrooms, and so I added this to appear every time this turns green or highlights an interactable object. And I'd like to not save anything. So okay, and then I think I covered both of those. Yeah, it was the size of the HUD, so it takes up less space, and I can demonstrate that where Unreal. So it takes up just generally less space, so the player is not feeling as crowded. And then they go through and you collect them, and then I have a debug here that adds the 40. Ooh, I'm just now realizing that we see now, if you see how it's tracking them, which the debug that I just used, it waits 5 seconds and then it marks each one complete, and that's what you just saw happen there. It added the 5 crystals to each section, as well as 49 to the life crystals. It does appear that I forgot to change the 100 there to 50 instead. I will have to go, I will make a bug report for that. I guess I don't know that would be actually considered a bug. Okay, so then this was the meat of my time here. So it was the life crystals. So making the life crystals increase the life of the player, as well as reset once they do, but not reset the score. And then the crystal shards was making each level have 5 of them, so 15 total. And then as the player collects them, the level crystal increases in brightness. And okay, I guess I'll show you one at a time. So the crystal shards, we wanted them to track each one separately on the HUD, as well as to have them all on one blueprint. When we originally created it, we had we had 3 blueprints, and it just was with the size constraint. I was really worried about the size going into that with the crystals. So my endeavor was to get it down to 1 blueprint for each one, and I was able to do that, as you can see here. At begin play, it fires off this event, which reads the portrait, and this is an instance editable, and each one is assigned to a portrait, or they're called portraits here. We changed them to pedestals. You'll see pedestals now. We started out with portraits, but it's these pedestals. So these pedestals have names, and depending on the name, I used a name switch here, switch on name, so it runs the different route, adding different colors to changing the different parameters of the material to a specific color depending on what the name of the pedestal is. All right, on to the next one. So the world crystal is the next one, which is going to be, as a player, I want the world crystal to activate when I've collected all level crystals signifying my achievement. And that is exactly what is done here. So, first, I don't know what's happening here. Why can't I see? Don't know what's going on with that. But that is the world crystal. It's lying dead and lifeless at the bottom of the tower. And I stuck in a debug to showcase the level crystal rising. So shortly after the player collects the third level crystal, there's a short delay, and then a cutscene will play for the world crystal. And there it is. Alright, so we see it rise up out of the tower, and it gets its shine, it gets the shimmering Niagara around it, and it changes colors based on the biomes, and then shortly after that happens, populates the wind screen. So that is the world crystal, short and sweet for that one. And then the portraits update. So this is what I was mentioning before. We didn't add a description at the beginning because we knew we wanted it to change. We weren't sure what we wanted it to change yet too. That was my fault for not going back in there to add a description when I landed on pedestals. And so that's what I did. We had portraits that kept track of the numbers, and instead of doing portraits, I wanted to do something else where it was more obvious, because the portraits didn't change or anything. They just had a picture of, like, think of the inspiration for those was the portraits on Super Mario Sunshine Island, where you would like jump in the portraits, except for our portraits you couldn't jump in. They just had a picture of the level. So I decided with the pedestals, just because I thought the pedestals looked better, and then you could put the players on it, and there was a lot of points where I did a lot of work, and then it wasn't working the way I wanted it to. Again, we had, at the start of this, we had 5 portrait blueprints, and I wanted to bring it down to 1 and have it all managed in 1. And so that's finally what I was able to do. That's for the crystal. So this is where it gets the crystal count, and it adds the text to the counter on the front here, so it keeps track of the number of crystals the player has. And this was done at begin play, and then it shoots off the set crystal color and counter, so that way it tells the crystal that it's associated with, as well as the counter what color they need to be. And then down over here is when the player collects any of the level crystals. This is what adds the count. This event is fired, and it adds the count to the portrait here, or the pedestal here. Yep, so that's it for the additional pedestals. And again, there's 3 of them, but I managed to get them all down. Nope, not that one. I managed to get them all down into one one blueprint, and so one blueprint manages all three of those. Okay. And then wind condition update, that was again the getting the, let's see, updates the wind condition to reflect the changes in overall scope of the project, adding some polish. So we had the wind conditions set up to you collect 5 level crystals and the world crystal activates, but since we were on a time crunch, we had to eliminate 2 levels. So we eliminated 2 levels, and we just needed to update the wind condition to match the 3 instead of the 2, as well as change all of the actual functionality of the level crystals and the world crystal. And that was what I kind of showcased already with the when I showed you the world crystal, how it populates the wind condition quickly after that, after you collect 3. The cinemas, and this is what I put in my sprint review. I didn't think it was going to be as difficult as it was. My assumption was that I could just use the same level sequences, just change the coordinates and everything. That did not work. The level crystals froze when I tried to use them, so I had to create all new level sequences for these crystals. All of these had to be completely new. It was not gonna work out for these were all, I had to remake all of these. I spent 2 hours on the wind cutscene, and then the camera started freezing in the middle when I played the game and activated the cutscene. And then same thing happened with the forest cutscene when I first started collecting this one. In the editor it was fine, but as soon as I tried to play it in the game, it would freeze halfway through the sequence, and it just would not do anything. The camera would freeze. The rest of the game would keep moving, but the camera would freeze. So couldn't figure out the issue that I had with those. So wound up removing all of the old ones and just creating entirely new ones. So that was a joy to work with. So that took longer than expected for sure. And then, so then the next thing here is the Crystal Shard Collection audio feedback. That's just the player feedback. We wanted to do something a little more, have a little more feedback when the player collected the shards, so it wasn't just, they weren't just disappearing when the player collected them. So we added different sounds for the different crystals being collected, and so I kind of wanted to make like a little splash or pop visual effect as well, but I did not have enough time with all the hiccups that I ran into with the other stuff. I just didn't have enough time to work that into the system here. And these two I was not able to get to just because of these were lower priority than our win condition, so they got set to the last positions. It took me a lot longer than I had hoped to get all this stuff done. But by the time I did get it all done, I had, the only other thing I had time for was the instructor had mentioned in his feedback that he didn't quite know what to do in our level, and there's not an issue for it here. So I'm not expecting any for it to add to my time at all. I'm not sure where you can see how much time was spent in the sprint. How much time total does it show? How much time total? Yeah, I'm not sure how to see the total time. But as you can see on the dashboard, I definitely was able to put in more than the 32 hours. So I was able to match that. And then on top of that, as part of the cutscene, since I was the one working the cutscenes, I went ahead and did the intro to this part here, the intro, where it just kind of shows some pictures for a little while, kind of explaining the backstory of the game and kind of telling the player what they need to do before even getting to the main menu. So as soon as they get to the main menu, they kind of already have a feel for what to expect once they get into the game and what needs to be done when they get into the game. So it just adds a little more direction to the game, I thought. So that's what I worked on with the little free time that I had, with the little extra time that I had, was just getting that done. And yeah, so that is the work that I did on during this sprint. It was all coding for me. I did the programming functionality of the win condition and the collectibles, as well as the life gain functionality for the life crystals. Somebody else did create the life crystals, I believe. They've been around for a while, but I was the one that went in and connected those to their collection to the functionality of gaining a life, which I don't know if I demonstrated that or not. But if you see up there in the corner, it says lives 4. And then if I hit 2, you'll see that my life crystal count just went up to 49. And if I collect 1, it resets to 0 and my lives go up by 1. And then you can do that as many times. I didn't put a cap on the lives just because I wasn't sure how many crystals we were going to put in anyway. So I just left it open-ended and let the player collect as many as they wanted. So, yep. That is everything that I did this sprint. I hope that you enjoyed watching me meander through everything I did. Thanks for watching and have a good night.